ahead and kick things off. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Family Insurance Dream Bank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Andy Frisky, and on behalf of our entire Dream Bank team here, we're so thrilled to have you with us here today. And as we get started, we always like to learn where people are joining and tuning in from. So if you're comfortable in doing so, please go ahead and drop in the chat where you are joining us from today. I'm located in sunny Madison, Wisconsin, right downtown. Steve, I think, is in Virginia, in the East Coast as well, too. So,
Yep.
yeah. And for those of you who maybe have attended our virtual or in-person events in the past, welcome back. And any of you who are joining us for the first time, would love to take just a few moments and introduce you to DreamBank. So here at American Family Insurance, life's better when you're under our roof because when you feel totally supported and protected, any dream is possible. And that's why we created DreamBank. It's an inspirational community destination and virtual experience that is designed to help people pursue, achieve, and protect their dreams. Really excited to welcome back to the stage, though, Steve McIrvin. Steve works with Wyze, which he'll get in and talk about kind of what Wyze does and the products they offer. But a DreamBank veteran at this point, returning to the DreamBank virtual stage. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Steve to take it away.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for inviting me back. And I'm glad to join all of you today. So as he said, I do work at Wyze, and we are a smart home company. And you'll see some of our products showcased throughout the presentation just because I have them in my home and I use them and I love them. So not a strong sales pitch, but just kind of a natural sharing of what I work with every day. So I've been doing smart home and internet connected devices for almost 10 years now. And I want to be able to give you what I think is hopefully an easy on-ramp and simple way to get started. So without further ado, I'll give you an overview of our agenda. So what we're going to talk about today, as the title suggests, my goal is to simplify this idea of getting into smart home technology. And to do that, I want to start out with a metaphor of a recipe that we can use something that you're familiar with, like cooking, to explain all of these new smart home devices and how you can use a smart home recipe to solve a problem that you have. Next, we'll go into smart assistants and the automation that those can provide. And then we'll look at smart appliances. So big appliances, small appliances, gadgets, anything like that. And then batteries and solar is our final topic. So you can learn about how a smart solar grid, a smart solar panel can save you some money. And then finally, I want to save some time at the end for Q&A. All right, so up first is this recipe metaphor. And the way I want to explain this is that I've come up with this simple kind of analogy that allows us to think of everything that you want to do in your smart home as a problem to solve. And the solution is just a simple recipe like your grandma had on a 3x5 card, just the ingredients you need and the steps that you have to take to solve that problem. The individual smart home devices are the ingredients, and then the directions or the steps in the recipe can either be created by you, or maybe they've already been done by someone else, such as a manufacturer or a very knowledgeable community member, or maybe just your buddy at work. And you just have to buy those ingredients and use their steps, or you can create your own to complete the recipe. Now, thinking back to food in the most basic formulation of a recipe, you have some really simple ingredients like flour, eggs, salt, and oil. And the counterpart in the smart home to those basic pantry staple ingredients are things like this plug that I'm showing here, and then maybe a light bulb, specifically a color light bulb like this Wyze color bulb, and maybe a smart switch that would replace your ordinary light switch. These devices are listed in order of difficulty. The plug, you can just plug in and begin using it right away. The light bulb is maybe a little bit harder because you have to figure out the right bulb size for your light socket and determine the brightness and the actual power output that you need. And literally there's 10 times as many smart bulbs out there as there are smart plugs because there's a wide variety. And of course, the switch can be pretty difficult in some cases because you do have to physically open up your electrical wiring and hardwire it in. So here's my first tip to simplify your initial smart home project. If you do end up buying a smart switch, you should be especially careful to check and be sure that your house has the neutral wiring, those white wires usually in the house for those switches, because the neutrals on the switches are what powers the switch, but those have only been required by the electrical code for the past few decades. So if your house is pretty new, you probably have neutral wires. If it's pretty old, you probably don't. And this is critical because you can't power the switch without those. So let's go ahead and look at a recipe in practice, a very simple one I created using one of these plugs. Okay, so this is our living room fountain. But when we bought it, the only way you could turn it on or off is by plugging it in and unplugging it. And you can see in this photo that I just have it plugged in straight to the wall outlet. Now, I quickly realized that this was going to wear out my patience, so I made the fountain smart. I used an outdoor plug with water resistance, and this one here is made by Wyze. And actually, it has two receptacles, so I could put another independent device on it and control them separately if I needed to. It's a little bit better now just by using this plug because the smart plug has a physical button to turn that receptacle on and off. So this plug gave the fountain a real switch, meaning no more unplugging, but it's not really smart yet. What does make it smart is that I can control the plug with my Wyze app and use automations to turn it on and off at different times of the day or days of the week, or in response to inputs from maybe a sensor. So let me quickly sum it up, review. I have this thing, it's a fountain in this case, and it can do something, though. It pumps water and it makes this lovely calming noise of trickling, flowing drops, and it's controllable over the internet. So this little sentence I gave is in a very precise format because I want to introduce you to a definition of what I consider IoT, or it's also called smart home gear, but IoT is kind of the industry term. And I will explain that on this next slide. So the quick definition, IoT, the acronym just stands for Internet of Things. But that's still not super helpful, right? It's just another jargon term. So let's first start by defining the T for things, kind of a backwards definition starting at the end. And I'm going to call these things physical objects that are maybe in your house, like that fountain in my house, or honestly, this smart toaster. Yeah, that's a real product you can buy as a smart toaster with a touch screen. Next, these physical things can do something in very general terms. They can act, as in the fountain's case. You've already heard me say that that would be to turn on and start pumping water. Or in the case of a sensor, it will record some sort of data. Now, this is a super high-level generic definition, and there are probably other devices that can do more than just act and record data. But these two fundamental buckets are going to be the most useful as you help form kind of a mental model and think about the recipes that I'm showing you in the rest of the presentation. Finally, we will go back to the beginning of that acronym IoT, and I'm going to state that these physical things that can act or record data are controllable via the internet. So that's where we get the I from. Okay, so now we're ready. Now that we have that kind of definition out of the way and our recipe metaphor set up, we're ready for assistance and automation. That last part of my definition, controlled from the internet, opens up this whole new realm of possibilities for your smart home. I think it's what really makes your smart home truly smart. It's not that you can just turn things on and off wirelessly, which you can, but having the device's intelligence in the cloud and everything running independently of your phone enables things like automation and complex sequences of devices instead of just a single button press. So what if we wanted this light bulb here, let me go ahead and show you that, to turn on automatically every week to remind you about your trash pickup day? We can even have the light bulb turn blue, like it is here in this picture, to remind you that there's a blue trash can that needs to be either put out on the curb, or maybe it's time to bring it in from the curb, depending on your need and what time of day it is. Now, in this photo, the light is on the outside of the house, but maybe you'd want it on the inside to make it easier to see and remind you. Moreover, if you have a sensor or a camera or some other device that can see the trash can and understand the trash can's location, pretty advanced, you can actually have the light only turn on if the trash can hasn't already been taken care of. So it's a super intelligent reminder. Another thing that the internet allows you to do, and maybe you have a local one that can do this as well, is to let your voice control these devices instead of just switches or screens, which are less convenient than simply talking. So going back to my fountain for a second, the primary way that I actually use this fountain is with a voice assistant. And I won't say their names because I don't want to actually trigger one at your house or trigger my own actually in the room. So whenever I'm in the mood for this calming sound of running water, I can just ask my smart assistant to turn the fountain on. And I just call it that exact name, turn the fountain on. I only have one. So keeping that in mind, let's dive deeper into these smart assistants and speakers and see how they fit into my recipe metaphor. So we've covered simple ingredients like lights and bulbs, but I would consider that the voice speakers or smart AI speakers, they're more like tools instead of ingredients. And tools maybe like a cookware, like your pots and pans or your knives, and they're not just simple other parts of your recipes. In fact, you'll use them in almost all your recipes. It turns out that speakers, surprisingly, can get pretty complex. So I've broken them down into 4 categories. And the first is you'll have these basic speakers like this Echo and Echo Dot from Amazon. And then there are speakers like the Echo Show that I'm showing here that have a screen. And this is, you can write this term down. It's beginning to look like what we have called a multimodal interaction paradigm. And I'll break that down. It's where you can just use your voice to ask for information, or you can use the screen, either one, and the device can answer either via the voice or the screen whenever it makes sense. So you're using kind of the best of both worlds. So that's kind of what multimodal means, is it takes from different kind of areas and different ways of communicating, and it picks the smartest. So after speakers with screens come really expensive speakers. And I'm showing an Apple HomePod here, maybe about $300 to $400, depending on which model you get. But there are ones from Sonos and Bose and quite a few other manufacturers that have a smart assistant inside of them and can cost quite a bit of money. But they are able to have similar audio quality and performance to a powerful traditional stereo system that you may have in your home theater. Finally, these are things that I just showed here. Remember that T in IoT that have smart assistants or smart speakers inside of them. And I'm showing here this ecobee premium thermostat that even if you don't have a separate smart speaker, this thermostat with the voice assistant inside will allow you to control the temperature in your house with just your voice. Now, in our house, we have a total of, I think, 6 smart speakers spread out throughout the entire home, including one of these ecobee thermostats with the smart speaker inside. And that's important for the next recipe I'm going to show you. But before we do that, though, I want to dive in a little bit to this smart thermostat because it seems silly at first to me to have a smart speaker inside of my thermostat. But I ended up keeping it because my local utility company, electric company, actually paid for most of it. And here is why. This particular model supports a program from my electric company, and yours probably does too. You just have to kind of look it up, Google your own utility provider, and it allows them to decrease or actually increase my house temperature by 2 degrees during the hottest days of summer, which takes some load off of their electrical grid. Now, the nice thing is that it's optional in that if I'm feeling too hot after they've done one of these, what they call demand response events, then I can just lower the temperature on my AC again, and I still get the program savings. So it's a really smart way to use IoT to lower your electrical bill and get some cool technology just for letting them play with your thermostat's temperature, maybe I think about a dozen or 18 days during the summer. Okay, so let's get back to what we can do when you have multiple of these smart speakers in the house. One of my favorite uses for having these 6 smart speakers is actually pretty simple. I have 4 kids, and it gets kind of crazy when we need to get their attention somehow, and they're in different parts of the house. So there used to be a whole lot of shouting and looking for people, and sometimes people would miss announcements and come late to dinner if they were distracted or just kind of deep buried in thought. But then we realized that if we were strategic about where we placed smart speakers, we could pretty much cover all the parts of the house where people are hanging out. So the recipe here is to use as many of these smart speakers as you need to cover your house. And hopefully you have some kids that need to listen. And then you have your device's assistant make an announcement, and the result is just no more shouting. You don't have to get people running around to try to find everyone to have breakfast or get ready to go out the door or go to bed or whatever. And unlike the wired intercoms, from the 1970s, 1980s, which were actually super expensive back then, this solution is pretty cheap. It's totally hands-free. And compared to those old wired units, these speakers also have a much higher quality, and you don't have to be right next to the little box. The announcement feature will work from 20, or I've even tried it up to 30 feet away, and that's very handy. I mean, like when you make the announcement, your voice can be that far away, and then obviously the recipient, whoever hears it, can be pretty far away as well. Okay, so now to get to the more boring parts of the recipe analogy, I'll skim through this pretty quickly. The bridges and hubs and routers, which in my metaphor are analogous to your kitchen cabinets maybe, or your countertops, you definitely need these things in the structure to make your recipes work, but it's not as flashy or exciting or entertaining. So you would normally just buy these infrastructure devices to make a specific device compatible and allow one of your ingredient devices to get on the internet. But then after that, you really wouldn't think about these cabinet type devices much down the road. Okay, so in our cooking metaphor, these control devices that I'm showing here, these four kind of categories, would be like your prep cook, someone who chops up all your vegetables for you, or your sous chef, to help you with both the quality and the overall volume, like the speed and volume, the output you can cook. These tools, think of like another analogy would be an orchestrator, a symphony orchestra conductor, so that you can use these all together to manage 100 or maybe even more home devices and connect them all together. You can have them interact with each other, even get handy insights displayed in a variety of really useful and informative graphs or reports about the actions that they've taken and the data they're recording. Remembering back to those two aspects of what an IoT device can do, act or record data. On the left part of this slide, the two pictures for Home Assistant and SmartThings are probably the most user-friendly of these four, because they have these really strong communities of contributors and device makers that make them extremely powerful, even while still being user-friendly and just open to beginners. Moreover, it's very likely that you already have SmartThings in particular, compatible device or compatible prep cook in your house, because most Samsung phones and all of the newer Samsung TVs, so like since 2023, 2024, Samsung TVs have this SmartThings controller capability already built in and just an app ready to go. The two on the right, the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino or ESP32, where there's actually a lot of these kind of devices, are just representative of the many types of the advanced do-it-yourself electronics kits that you can add into your smart home. Basically, the sky's the limit with these guys on the right. You can do so much customization that if you want to do a little bit of programming, maybe with the help of an AI assistant, or even some tiny bit of soldering, with the two on the right, a lot of people have actually already done a lot of the advanced recipes for you, and you can just copy the recipe. So it's not like you even have to create your own. You can just buy some hardware and the components, and there are these really rich tutorials and guidelines for how to accomplish the goal you're going for, or the problem you're trying to solve. Now, finally, there are a ton of advanced ingredients as well, and we will cover one of them, these solar panels in the middle, combined with smart solar inverters with whole home batteries. We'll do that at the end of the presentation, and then we'll have some smart appliances for your kitchen and laundry room in the next section. But first, we're going to look at some more recipes. And this one I'm going to show you now is at 5 different levels of complexity, just to give you an idea of how deep you can really go. Okay, So let's say your goal is to automate the process of watering one or more plants, house plants, in your home. The first level is super easy, and that's just have your voice assistant remind you. This requires no additional hardware beyond that smart speaker. And I really like it because you can have the reminder play for whomever happens to be home when the plant needs to be watered. So it's not just tied to your smartphone or your calendar alone. It can be for anybody in the house. Now, level 2 requires some extra hardware beyond that smart speaker, but you can actually get a smart water pump for surprisingly cheap. And then you just activate it via your phone, no matter where you are. So you can be remotely, and that smart water pump will dispense this precise amount of water to one or even more plants, depending on the tubing you decide to set up. This level improves upon the last one because you can have it water your plants remotely, no matter where you are. Really, it's kind of over the internet again, like we talked about. Level 3 is to have this smart water pump water the plants on a schedule, which basically combines the reminder functionality of level 1 with the automatic pumping of level 2, so that maybe, for example, every 4 days, your plant gets this precise amount of water. And then all you have to do is remember to fill up the pump's larger, huge bucket of water, the reservoir, whenever it gets empty. Level 4 then is to take the orchestration a step further and have the smart pump only water based on the input from a soil moisture sensor. So instead of a fixed schedule of 4 days, the moisture sensor is maybe telling the pump to water every other day during the summer because it's hot and dry. But during the winter, when it's cold and damp and evaporation is low, the moisture sensor instructs the pump to water much less often, again, based on real data about the exact conditions in your plant's soil. Finally, for level 5, you can take this IoT game to the extreme, like these grad students did. If you get a copy of the slides, you can type in this YouTube video. They just used simple off-the-shelf smart components like pumps and motors and wheels combined with the water reservoir and this hose that can go up and down to reach plants on shelves all around their test lab, or in your case, it would be all around your home. What's really cool is that the robot they made uses computer vision to correctly determine the placement of the plants that need watering, even if you have rearranged the plants to some different locations since the last time the robot did its job. So you don't have to instruct the robot where the plants are, it'll just find them. And that's some pretty sci-fi level stuff, in my opinion, but it's very achievable at a surprisingly low cost. And since people have already done the work and can share their solutions, your job is to follow them is a whole lot easier. Okay, let's get into a fun recipe I found on multiple forums about gardening and wildlife. Let's talk about bears, cameras, and sprinklers. We're going to use this Raccio Smart Sprinkler controller that I'm showing here on the right. We're going to make it work a bit smarter by using a Wyze camera to watch your yard or your garden at night. The idea is very simple. If the camera spots an animal, using computer vision again, after 10 p.m., the Raccio will turn on the sprinklers for a short burst so that the critter gets a frightening splash that keeps it away from your yard. You can also buy a smart hose controller for just a single sprinkler if you don't have a big multi-zone system. So first, you would set up the Wyze camera in the yard and make sure it can see everything, and you would have it turned on and doing the motion detection. And then in the camera's app, you would enable pet detection. It has different types of smart detections for people and pets and vehicles. So you would enable the pet detection feature to set the detection window to start after 10 p.m. And then you would use one of the sous chefs that I've been talking about, or the prep cooks. Like, you don't even need a hardware solution. There's this online service called IFTTT, if this, then that, to tell the sprinkler system to turn on whenever the Wyze camera in the backyard detects an animal after 10 p.m. And the sprinklers are this harmless deterrent that can keep the bears or the raccoons or deers or other pesky critters away from invading your garden or your trash cans or whatever you want to protect. Now, okay, let's move to a recipe inside of the house instead of outside. We've had one outside, now we can go back inside. Let's say you have the responsibility to care for an aging parent, but like my mom and dad, my dad specifically, your mom or dad still lives independently, and maybe they live far away across town or across the country, and you need to help them from a distance. In this example, maybe you want to check to see if they have opened their medicine cabinet each morning to take their required pills. It's really easy to set up a contact sensor on the medicine cabinet so that as soon as it's opened each day, it can turn on automatically to turn on maybe a light bulb and make that light bulb turn green. And the beautiful part about being over the internet, have these things controllable, is that if you just set it up right, the light bulb can actually be in your house. So that when your mom or dad opens the medicine cabinet in their home, what you see is when you see the actual light bulb turn on in your home across the country or across town, and this light bulb can turn on green where you can actually see it. But what if they forget? If they don't, you don't want to be able to just not notice the light bulb. You can actually automate the system at that point so that if by noon or 1 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whenever they're supposed to, at 10 a.m., whenever they're supposed to take their pills, and if the medicine cabinet has not been opened, the light bulb in your house can turn on and light up red to let you know. Then you can give your mom and dad a call or FaceTime or text message and remind them to go ahead and open up the medicine cabinet and get today's selection of pills. This recipe is super lightweight, it's very easy to set up, and it specifically, on purpose, keeps a human in the loop, is what they call it, human in the loop. Because this is your loved one we're talking about. That's a big takeaway about the flexibility that smart home technology provides. You don't necessarily want everything in your home, in your life, to be automated. A lot of time, you just want some extra accountability or visibility so that you can care for someone or even care for yourself appropriately. Okay, so with that last solution, you are helping to protect your parents by giving them some gentle reminders. But what about protecting your home? IoT can really help here as well, even if you're not home, because you can get a leak sensor that watches for water in places that it's not supposed to be. You can get that also, you can get that same contact sensor that we used on the medicine cabinet to sense and see if you left your refrigerator or your freezer. Maybe somebody left the door open, or you had a midnight ice cream raid and you left the door open. So, and you can have, the beautiful part about this is since these devices are all separate but interconnected, you can have another device take an action. In the medicine cabinet that we had, the light bulb was alerting you, but maybe for something as critical as a leak, you would want a siren to be taking the action. Or in that case, if it's really leaking and is going for like a minute, or there's a ton of water, you can even get what they call a smart water shutoff valve that will turn off the main water valve in your entire home automatically. And this is especially helpful if, let's say, you're on vacation during winter and maybe for the holidays and your pipes have frozen when you're not there. So this will enable you to protect your home or your house even while you're away. And this is just a small preview of protection. And I'll definitely use this same example again in a talk I'm giving in December, when the idea of protecting homes is on a lot of people's minds as they're taking vacation and traveling during the holidays. So go ahead and be sure to register for that DreamBank presentation as well, scheduled for early December. So let's do one final recipe using a camera and garage door controller. The nice thing with IoT is that you can control it from huge distances, like our vacation example, or the water leak. But you don't have to be out of the house. Maybe you're just getting in bed at night and you're already warm and half asleep. And then, you realize, like I do like once a week, that I don't actually know if I've remembered to shut the garage door. So with your smart camera, I'll give you 3 levels of smart home help. First, you can just visually check and see that it's closed by bringing up the video feed of your car in your garage. And this is a screenshot of my actual car in the garage viewed by one of my Wyze cameras. And you can see in this photo that the garage door is indeed closed. But what if it were open? The next level of automation is that I can easily close the door by pressing a button right there in the app. And you can see that blue arrow where that's pointed. And that's very convenient because I don't have to get out of bed and go down there just to hit the button on the wall. And my garage door opener is actually controlled directly by my Wyze camera in this case. And it even includes safety features like an audio alert. It'll give you a ding multiple times, kind of like a siren before it starts, even closing, along with a flashing light, so that if there's a person there, they can know to get out of the way. But then you have visual confirmation on the camera as well. You can say, oh yeah, no one's there. The automation, the safety warnings will be especially important for this next level, and that's where you can actually have the garage door opener close the door automatically, maybe based on a time of day, for example, or any other trigger that you can think of with a wide variety of triggers in the app. The beautiful part about all these recipes is that I can just go on and on. There are so many advanced ingredients and incredibly creative ways to combine them. So I really encourage you to start out with just maybe one of the simple speakers, the smart speakers. You can get them on sale for $20 or $30. And then a bulb, sometimes the bulb even comes for free with the smart speaker, or a plug. And then figure out what problems you want to solve. Ask around on various internet forums or Reddit, or maybe even an AI chatbot, or just your buddy at work. See what some proposed solutions are. I think you'll be surprised at how quick and inexpensive and easy solving problems with IoT recipes can be. For part 3, we're going to have some smart appliances, and I'm going to take a break. And it looks like I'm right on time for my time check. Okay, so smart appliances are where many customers, I'll call it inadvertently, begin their smart home journey. They buy a new kitchen appliance or a new washer and dryer, or maybe a new furnace, and there are smart features that just come with it nowadays. If you buy a nice high-end feature, maybe it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The easiest entry point here is what I call a gadget, a very small kitchen appliance that maybe has Bluetooth or Wi-Fi built in. And I actually own this particular one here, this meat thermometer. And you didn't necessarily buy it for the connected feature, but it is very handy if you use it with the internet. What I have here is this smart meat thermometer from Tyfer, and it actually comes with both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and they use these two different technologies in a really smart way. The meat probe, the part on that right, that little long skinny piece, has a tiny Bluetooth, very low power radio inside of it and a battery, and it's heat tolerant up to really high temperatures. So you can actually have it inside of your fish or your pork roast or chicken or steak while it's on the grill or even in an oven. And the nice part is that the thermometer then connects to that little base station on the right, and the base station actually gets on the internet with Wi-Fi. So you can connect, check the temperature of your smoked brisket from across town, which is really great for those 12-hour low and slow barbecue meals that you like to cook in the summer. These kind of things actually make an incredible gift for the person in your life that likes to grill. And I got my father-in-law one just like this. I got one identical to mine, and he uses it in his big green egg slow cooker. So next, you can get a wide variety of countertop smart devices as well. And these are usually some sort of tiny oven, like this Tovala smart oven that I show in this picture. The internet connectivity portion of the oven includes the ability to scan a barcode from either something you buy off the shelf, and then it'll use the internet to look up that barcode. And it can be something, a lot of stuff off the shelf in the supermarket if they've partnered with Tovala, like you can get a frozen meal from your grocery store or a bowl of easy mac and cheese, or you can scan a meal from the subscription service that Tovala will sell you. So they want to pair this weekly delivery of their meals with this very low cost smart oven. So by scanning the code, the oven knows exactly how to cook that particular meal perfectly, no guesswork, including turning on a fan at the right time. So it can be a convection oven, regulating the temperature at different points, like maybe it goes really high and then low and then up and down as it needs to. Or what I like it in the higher end smart oven by Tovala, they even add steam. They'll put a little water reservoir in there and it turns that on at a certain point in the cooking cycle. so that your food doesn't get dried out. Um, the opposite end of the price spectrum that I'm showing, so we've gone from like the smart meat thermometer, less than $100, to the countertop, which may be 100 to 200, and then this LG washer dryer combo is about 2,000. And it's the example I'll use for large appliances, but you may see a smart refrigerator with a screen built in, or a smart dishwasher, or especially a smart HVAC system that has a smart thermostat built in, that communicates with it. The LG laundry machine that I'm showing here uses the internet for a very cool feature. It lets you save a lot of money by communicating with your electrical utility, providing a provider to run the expensive part of the cycle when it dries the clothes, when your utility rates are lowest. So it'll actually wait and says, oh, I know now this week when the utility rates have actually gone down, and then I'll start the expensive part. So even if you spend that $2,000 or maybe $3,000 up front, these kind of appliances can pay you back over time through electricity savings. And this particular one is unique because it's a combination unit. It has the washer and the dryer in the same tub, and it dries clothes using an energy-saving heat pump. And there's no exterior dryer vent. The downside of these is obviously that higher upfront expense, and they can take longer to do a full cycle, maybe up to 4 hours. But because the washer and dryer are integrated, there's just one tub, so you don't have to change the laundry between the wash and the dry cycles. So you can load your clothes into the tub, program your smartphone to start the load whenever it hears the signal that your electrical rates are lowest, and then you go to bed. You wake up in the morning and you have this laundry that's completely fresh and dry, and you didn't touch it in the interim. You didn't have to change anything over. So it just did all that for you. Okay, so now if we keep going down this smart appliance rabbit hole, it turns out that there's this whole separate subcategory of smart countertop appliances made up of something called sous vide. If you haven't heard of this term before, and I've never personally owned it, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's basically just cooking your meal in one or more vacuum sealed bags in this temperature controlled water bath that is constantly adjusted to stay precisely at the optimal temperature. This cooking method, this water bath, allows you to cook something very delicate and keep it at the right temperature the whole time. And you can use a smartphone app to monitor the temperature, or maybe even a recipe built into the app to set the right temperature for you. And then you'll have a perfectly cooked, say, medium rare steak staying at that right temperature, not drying out or overcooking, waiting for you until it's time for dinner. With this technique, you can get actually perfectly textured yolks in your poached eggs, and you can never overcook your fish, even if the thickness of the fillet isn't uniform. So that's very hard, especially in like a salmon fillet. And I'm pretty sure that you've already eaten sous vide sometime in the past, because a lot of restaurants will use this technique to cook their food, especially in a high volume environment. Now, there are 3 basic ways I'm going to show you on the screen here to cook with one of these appliances. The first one you might already own, and that's by using an Instant Pot with a sous vide setting. The pot gets filled with water, just pure water this time, instead of your normal cooking broth. And then you place your vacuum sealed bag with your entree or your side dish or whatever in the pot of water, and the Instant Pot will keep the entire water bath at the desired temperature without using the pressure cooking function that you normally use. The downside of the Instant Pot is that hot water can actually have a surprising temperature gradient in different parts of the pot. So most sous vide devices will not only heat the water in your metal pan or your plastic tub, but they will also circulate it, like I'm showing here, in this stick style device. And you can have a much larger water bath and regulate the temperature even just perfectly evenly throughout the pot, because it's moving that hot water around. Now, the Instant Pot price point is around $100, or maybe it's kind of free to use since if you already have one of these because you bought it for the pressure cooking or slow cooking function. In contrast, the stick immersion device is usually in the 100 to 200 range. And finally, if you want to go even higher, I'm showing here this sous vide station made by that same company, Tyfer, that had made my meat thermometer. This model is $600, and it's so expensive because it includes a 12-inch tablet to control everything. It also has that integrated water bath that you can see with a very powerful circulation pump, very good hot water. They even include things like a vacuum sealer and several other accessories. All right. So as a bonus, I want to ask you one question. Is this a kitchen appliance? And I'll explain why. I'm only showing you this one smart appliance that you don't normally think of as belonging in the kitchen, but we use ours all the time in the kitchen. It's this Wyze air purifier. It's because our particular kitchen doesn't have a built-in stove fume hood. Now, we don't often generate a lot of smoke when we cook, but when we do, we do some frying or searing on the stovetop, and it's always going to generate a little bit of smoke. And that's where this Wyze air purifier comes in. I wanted to show you the intelligence of how this model works because it has a built-in laser air quality sensor that can detect not only smoke particles, but any kind of pollutant particles in the air, including very, very small ones, down to like plant pollen or even animal allergens. Since I can't obviously demonstrate cat dander very easily, last week I recorded a short video of me blowing out a candle and the incredible amount of smoke that it generates. So let's watch the video, and you'll see that after I blow out the candle, the air purifier will sense all that smoke and it will automatically change the fan speed in response. And I could turn the air purifier on and off with Wi-Fi. I can set the levels with Wi-Fi, but it'll also set the levels automatically depending on the integrated smoke sensor and particle sensor. So let's take a look. So you can see the readout in the front already jumped up 172, 235, over 300. It's getting angry now. So it maxes out at 500. That's the highest it goes. Even if you have 500 air quality, you kind of want to leave the room right then. But you can see how quickly the air purifier actually deals with that. And so I won't go any further. You can see it going down. So that's a good thing to have in your home if you have some indoor type pollutants. Okay, so I want to finish up with the last part before our Q&A, and that's in smart solar and batteries. In this slide, I have this picture that my dad kindly provided of the new solar system he put on his house, I think about 4 months ago. And so if you're considering doing something like this, 2025 will probably be the last year that the US government federal tax credit pays for part of it. I think it's 30% of the total cost. So make sure and look at the timetables and criteria if you want to do something like this, because this is probably the last year of the final credit. What makes this solar system smart, or IoT, is the Tesla inverter that my dad bought with his gateway. Tesla actually sells smart batteries and the smart chargers. And so he bought one of the kind of components of those smart chargers called an inverter that takes the DC current from the solar panels and turns it into the AC current that his house can use. The internet connectivity allows these incredibly detailed data graphs and reporting like you see on this graph. My dad doesn't have a battery with his solar panels, so instead, the energy his system produces is used in a program that electric companies call net metering. And that's the kind of professional term for what people often describe as where your electric meter kind of runs backwards when your solar panels are producing more power than your house is using. You can see in the graph here that when the sun is shining, and that's the graphs that are in blue, he gets credit on his electric bill for all of the energy in those blue bars. At night or when it's too cloudy, you can see in those periods in the green bars. This is counted as what they call forward electric usage from the grid. And he's charged for those kilowatt hours just as he normally would be, just like you and I would be if we don't have a solar system. The system on my dad's house is estimated to be paying for itself in less than 10 years, but with the warranties and the design, it could last up to 30 years. So those last 20 years after the initial payback period will have essentially giving him free power generated every day that the sun is shining. And no, before you ask, I didn't choose the colors of this graph that he sent me to match my slides. That was just this very kind of happy coincidence to match the green and blue. So now remember, my dad's system does not have a battery with it, but solar installations often do include some sort of battery from companies like Tesla with their Powerwall brand, or I believe other companies like Generac make them as well. Having a battery means that even if net metering is not available or not profitable where you are, you can still use solar with a battery in the following cases. Power outages are a great example where if you have a sufficiently large battery, you can run your whole house while the power is out. And even if you have a battery paired, and especially if you have a battery paired with a smart electrical panel, or sometimes called a breaker box, you can automatically turn off the circuits that you don't need. And this allows you to extend the battery capacity to last for several weeks because you're only running critical systems like a refrigerator or lights in the bathroom or your furnace's electrical fan and electronics when the heat exchanger is powered by natural gas or propane in the winter. You can also use a battery system and solar panels to go completely off the grid, maybe at your vacation cabin or at a tiny home or workshop on your existing lot where you don't want to run power, but you can run solar out to that location. The third scenario where batteries would help you is if your utility provider has something called time of usage, TOU rates, that I talked about when I was speaking about the smart clothes dryer. The battery can feed your home's electrical needs during the high cost times, and then you can switch back to the grid when power rates are cheaper. So the solar powers the battery, and you use that solar energy when it's most expensive or profitable to do so, and then you use grid energy when it's lowest cost to you. And then finally, one of the more obvious ways is to be able to store your excess electricity generated during the day. And then you can use that excess energy that's stored in your battery to run your home electricity after the sun has gone to bed. If you want to get started with a solar project, you do need to do a lot of research. And my first and probably smartest recommendation is to do all your research with someone that's not incentivized to sell you something. Like if you do your research with a solar company, they're going to try to sell you solar. So maybe start with somebody like a nonprofit. And I'm showing here the Center for Energy Education, which has that centerforee.org website. The biggest thing you need to pay attention to is the assumptions that they make in the costs, especially around the payback period. Remember, I said my dad's was estimated to be around 10 years, but that'll vary wildly depending on the rates and the assumptions in your area, your electricity rates, especially the assumption of a lot of times they will assume that over the next 20 years, your utility rates are going to increase at a constant or maybe even a very high rate. And so you want to make sure that you understand all those assumptions, especially if there's financing involved. If you're taking out a loan to pay these panels, or especially on complex financing things like a lease, you want to be especially careful to understand all of what they're telling you and really calculate if solar is something that is going to be worth it in the long run for you, and if it's going to add really value to your home, whether you stay at your home or if you're going to sell your home, it really needs to add value. And in some states like California, it certainly can, or Florida. Other states, maybe it's not so useful because you have cheap power and not very much sun. All right, so let's go to the Q&A part. First of all, thank you for your attention, and especially to Andy for inviting me back. Now I want to know, we've got about 10, 12 minutes left. I want to know what kind of questions you have for me.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. And thank you so much for sharing just an update and just a general lay of the land on those products and use cases. Just some really fascinating stuff. I think the light bulb, putting it in maybe aging parents' houses and putting in the cabinet, I thought that was a really creative and innovative way to use this technology. And we'll give folks some time here to type any replies or questions they have for Steve. But I was wondering maybe if you can elaborate a little more or just kind of share your opinion on the continued evolution and use cases for these devices. Obviously, the stuff that you shared is available right now, but would love to hear just if you were to look into your crystal ball into the future, what are you most optimistic or excited about and in innovative ways to use some of these devices that maybe the general person maybe hadn't considered?
I'm super excited about that aging parents scenario that you talked about. I think at home, especially the term is called aging in place.
Hmm.
So instead of having your parent go off to a nursing home or a retirement home or even like an independent living community, a lot of people, when they survey them, I think it's about 2/3 of people that when they retire or when they become disabled, even if they're not disabled, they want to retire in their own homes. And they want to stay where they are. So if smart technology can help someone do that, if it can help someone keep their dignity, keep their independence, while also providing loved ones the chance to know that they're safe, to know that there's nothing weird going on, that's what I consider true kind of smart tech, like being able to solve those kinds of problems for the ones that you really care about. So I'm excited about
Sure.
that. And there's tons more. I gave some simple examples, but there's a lot of research and work going into these solutions.
No, I love that. I love that. We got some questions about this recording, if this event's being recorded. It is being recorded, and the recording will be shared out to you to the email address in which you used to register today. So even if you showed up late or want to rewatch, you're able to do that. And then also there's a brief post-event survey that will be sent to your email address as well. That really helps kind of guide and dictate the types of content that we put out. So would really appreciate it if you all just took a few moments to fill that out as well. We'll still give it some more time here for folks to kind of type any questions they may have or additional questions they may have. Another thing that has been kind of top of mind for me and other folks when I've chatted about some of these IoT devices is kind of security and safety, right? I know some folks that are reluctant to put any speaker devices in their home and just really trying to protect themselves from any potential security breach or risk. And was wondering if you can speak to that, whether it be the overall security of devices in general, maybe where are some pain points, or I know it's a sneak peek, but I know that you're going to be talking about security mostly from like I think a physical device in the software later this year, but was wondering if you could talk about maybe PII or personal data that might be shared through some of these devices and either ways that folks can protect themselves or help mitigate some of that risk on the front end.
Yeah, my first kind of advice for you is to only buy stuff from really kind of established brands, and especially be careful of the ones that are maybe have had incidents in the past or are too small, and you're not sure kind of how they make their money. If it's too cheap, maybe that's an indication that they might be selling data or something is nefarious is going on. So if you trust like an Amazon brand or a Google brand with your search data or your credit card data, your shopping history. Maybe you could trust them with your voice. But if you don't do that, there are a lot of solutions now that will what's called a local model, and it can actually use a completely local voice assistant. So the processing of your voice is completely done on a device that stays within your network. It never actually goes out to
Mm,
the internet. So you can do some of that with that home assistant technology that I talked about. That you have, I'm sure all of us, if we have a smart speaker, we've had accidental wake word activations, what they call
yeah.
that, when you say the name and you don't intend for that. The policies are pretty clear, like they have good privacy policies around that. They're supposed to scrub that data. And so my first actual job in IoT was in 2013, I believe it was, working in the voice device division of Amazon at the time. And we had incredibly strict controls and privacy. And I think it's only gotten better since then. So I'm personally very comfortable. As you've heard, I have 6 of these devices in my home. But at the same time, I don't have a camera in my bedroom, for example, or in any
Hmm.
bathrooms. So, there's certain places where you just don't want the cameras, and places like Google has responded to that. Like Google has a smart speaker with a screen that does
Hmm.
not have a camera. It actually uses a radar device to do sleep tracking, but it has no camera on it. So there
Hmm.
are a lot of kind of niche kind of features that you can have that, hey, I'm only comfortable with this level of sharing. I'll buy this specific device.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess building kind of on the topic of security, I know we got a couple other questions that have come in here. This question is, my worry is how to keep the software in these devices all up to date, especially around security patching. And they
Yeah.
mentioned that they work as a QA engineer who breaks down software for a living.
Yeah.
What has been your actual experience so that they can ground their concerns in reality?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so this is why typically what we find is that people who end up with multiple different device manufacturers and have all these different apps and ecosystems, they're the people that are the least satisfied. And that's really hard because they end up with all these different conflicting kind of standards that don't work with each other, and they have all these different apps to maintain, and they're doing all these different firmware updates. And so we do find out that one of the things that Wyze did initially and has kind of stuck with is to be able to have all of your devices, cameras, or you saw I have that air purifier or smart plug. It's all in one app, and that one app goes out and gets firmware updates from the cloud in real time, and it'll notify you. You can either say, "Hey, tell me right now," and you can do them all in one. Like it has a one screen to do batch updates of. I can do 9 firmware updates all at once. We can actually. I've seen some other devices that will do automatic firmware updates for you, and that's some people aren't as comfortable with that because it could also mean automatically disconnecting if something goes wrong. Like if there's a firmware update going on and you don't realize it and you disconnect some power, or you aren't able to let it complete somehow. So that's always a risk, but that's the joy of saying, okay, hey, let's have one ecosystem or as few ecosystems as possible, and then you have fewer apps to maintain all those updates and manage it. I have Windows and Mac computers and iPads and Android phones. And sometimes I think that's like my only job is to just keep those devices updated with the latest software version. So it is a very real problem, but by minimizing the number of overall ecosystems you have, you can use functions like that in batch update.
Wonderful. Thank you for that reply. And I guess kind of building on just the plethora of devices that are available, we had another question kind of touching on that. This individual asked, is there a clearinghouse that we can go to start this whole process? They would like to avoid a piecemeal start or install. So
Oh,
is there a way where folks can maybe make either a one-time purchase or a bulk purchase on kind of these devices somewhere? Maybe this is a shameless plug for some of the work that you do as well. I know that Wyze has a lot of wonderful devices as well, but yeah,
yeah.
what advice do you have for this individual?
If you want to go towards cameras, thank you. Yeah, definitely Wyze is a great way to go for cameras. You can buy bundles of the cameras. That kind of bundle or easy combination strategy, there's a technology I didn't cover here. I actually didn't want to duplicate what I did last year, but I talked last year about what the milestones of the future would be. And one of
Mm,
those milestones is interoperability. So there's a standard that's been on the horizon now. It's released and it's out there. It's just still not as adopted as we'd like to see. The standard is called Matter. So if I were starting fresh, um, zero invested in the smart home system, I would probably want to select devices that are all Matter compliant. And then that way they actually do have, I believe one of their functions is to do firmware updates via the Matter controller. So you would have your smart speaker or even your Apple TV is a Matter controller. And then you can buy a device that's Matter compatible from any of the brands that have signed up. There's over 200 brands, I believe, that have signed up
mm,
to be Matter tested and certified. So you can have like a light bulb from IKEA and a plug from TP-Link and a switch or panel from Aqara, and they will all work together. The downside is that not every device category works in Matter yet. Like cameras are famously unsupported by Matter. And then Matter itself doesn't support the rich number of features and interactions that you're going to get through the device's own. So for example, the Wyze bulb that I was talking about, the white bulb specifically has a feature called sun match. And that as the sun goes throughout its course of the day, it starts out very yellow, like kind of normal golden. At the middle of the day, it's white, bright white daylight. And then at the end of the day, again, it's kind of that warmer light. And Matter doesn't support that feature yet. So even if we did have a Matter bulb, that's an advanced feature that is unique to the manufacturer. So that's the one caveat and downside of Matter.
gotcha. Thank you for that. This will probably be the last question we have time for. This question's in regards to pricing as it comes to solar. So this individual said that very interesting overall. That pertaining to the cost of solar and adding a battery to their solar setup, it sounds like it almost is the same price or more expensive as their solar setup. They also comment
Batteries are
on,
expensive. Yep.
yeah, the software that comes with inverter varies as to how much and information it provides and control that you can provide. Their question, is there any way around any of that? Then they state otherwise you need to be home when to use the energy when it is generated. So um, I don't know if you could speak to that at all, or I could certainly try and read that or summarize that in a
Yeah, I mean,
succinct way.
it is complex right now, and you do probably need you're at the mercy of your installer's expertise. If they're only working with one brand of inverter or one brand of panel or one brand of battery, and they only want to combine those, that's going to be hard. So you can shop for solar installers that have the kind of features that you're talking about. Um, there's not a great way around it. I'm not the expert on this. I kind of watched as my dad found his way through this. He has been happy with that Tesla inverter, and the magic part of the Tesla inverter, I believe, is that there was less hardware up on the roof, so the actual installation costs were a lot lower for him. So the smart
Hmm.
features were just kind of an added bonus and a nice to have. But that inverter that he got was puts all of the inverter electronics in a covered area in the garage where it was easy to install. And so that lowered his installation costs quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Steve, that concludes all the time that we have right now. Thank you so much for putting this
You're
together. Such
welcome. Yeah.
a wealth of information. I mean, I know I shared some tidbits that really kind of stuck with me based on the comments that were coming in, and I know it resonated with many folks as well too. So if you're interested in learning more about upcoming DreamBank programming, you can head to our website, which is amfam.com/DreamBank, just to see the wonderful events that we have coming down the pipeline. As I mentioned, Steve will be returning to the stage here in December, but we have a lot of other wonderful additional events that are all organized through the lens of personal and professional development. So highly recommend you all check that out. With that being said, again, we are at time, so we will go ahead and cap it there, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.